The Sabres Scoop, hosted by Brandon, Jordan, and Tom, talking everything Sabres.
Hey, and welcome to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers. We're a once-a-week show covering all things Buffalo Sabres and NHL hockey. We want to thank you for joining us today, and to make sure you don't miss any of our future episodes, you can subscribe to us on YouTube at the Hockey Writers and on Facebook. And check out the great hockey content at thehockeywriters.com. You can also find our show on Twitter at SabresScoop THW and at the Hockey Writer.
Yes, and today we are joined by Walter Zurowski, also known as @Sabermetrics on Twitter. He writes for the Charging Buffalo, covering hockey analytics and prospects for them. He also creates his own visualizations on Public Tableau, creating vids about the USHL draft year forwards, transition data for the Sabres, and Rochester American expected primary points. We love analytics here, so welcome to the show, Walter.
It's great to be here. Really looking forward to talking about some Sabres hockey. I can't get enough of this team.
Oh, yeah. And finally, we have no more players left on the COVID protocol. We're still waiting for Dylan Cousins, Casey Middlestead, and Rasmus Ristolainen to get back into some games. But yeah, things are not looking great in Buffalo.
Yeah, Jordan, to piggyback off that, that's been sort of the storyline. One of the storylines as far as, the Sabres this week, they haven't been without some of those key players such as Ristolainen and, especially Cousins, I think was a big loss. Middlestat, not so much, but, I'm happy everybody is off the COVID list. It's good to have them back. But this Islanders series earlier in the week, the first two games that the Sabres played back to back after the COVID break, Monday and Tuesday there, 2 regulation losses, obviously. Same players score for the Islanders, Anders Lee and JG Pageau. Ullmark gets a start, Hutton gets a start. What do we think about just how the team came out and played? And what do we think about the call-ups? I want to throw out Will Borgen's name there in specific and just get your guys' thoughts on that.
I can go first. I was not judging those games too hard, seeing as though the team had been off the ice for more than 2 weeks. They're coming in after a COVID outbreak. They're missing a handful of key players. That game really wasn't, to me, a deciding factor on the potential of this team. Tonight's got me questioning it a bit more after the Caps game, but it was a very poor showing. Like, no one can deny that. You go 0 shots in the third period that game. They played terrible. They didn't look like they should be out there, but I didn't put too much weight on it. I don't know what do you guys think about that, but.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. Coming back from all those COVID cases, but just kind of going off tonight, I really wanted to see the Sabres, maybe just bounce back a little bit from that Islanders series. And it's still looking kind of like the same, like, uninspiring hockey, especially their 5-on-5 offense. There's really not generating much. Everything's kind of kept out to the perimeter. A lot of the defensemen don't really activate the offensive zone. They're kind of just stuck on the blue line. Same with the forwards, just parked in front of the net. So, it's really kind of discouraging to see, because it's like the same problems the Sabres had last year playing this system. I know there's new personnel this year, but it's looking like the same team. And hopefully the season doesn't take a turn for the worse like it did last year after a pretty nice start. But it's looking like it's trending towards that direction.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, that there's a lot of the players do look pretty uninspired. I know we were talking about this before the show a bit. Some of these guys, even Eichel, you just see them give up on some shifts. You see the pucks there, and they'll just slow. It looks like this team is not passionate about what they're doing right now.
Yeah, and that's a great tie into tonight's game, right, Tom? A 3-1 loss. On paper doesn't look that bad. Teams lose 3-1 every single night, but the story of this game to me was just the Sabres didn't look. I wasn't convinced that they were going to win at any point during the game after the first goal.
Yeah, it is really interesting. You see them show signs of hope multiple times through the game. You'll see them get some dominating possessions or wide open chances, and somehow they always manage to mess it up. It's a missed post, missed net. You can always talk about Jeff Skinner, who still hasn't scored this season. He had 4 shot attempts tonight. Not a single one was even on the net. So now This is an example. I don't even. Am I calling this bad puck luck anymore, or is this just ridiculous at this point? How does someone like Jeff Skinner go 13 games and still not have a goal with the amount of opportunities he's given? What do you guys think the issue is here?
You just got to think, where would this team be without Linus Allmark, especially with that Save of the Year candidate right there off the Connor Shuey one-timer? This team would be like probably dead last. I know they're 40 trending that way already, but they would be dead last without Linus Allmark.
Yeah. And so we can kind of transition into tonight's game. So kind of what our thoughts on it are here. The Sabres again let up the first goal of the game. This is 13 games this season, 10 games now they've allowed the first goal against. And we've clearly seen now that they don't do well when they're down early. So it's disappointing, especially when you see that they come out with fairly good starts to all of these games, and then it's just one bad turn and it just seems to go downhill from here. So what did you guys really take out of tonight's game?
Yeah, I think bad puck luck or snake bitten scorers would not even begin to describe the lack of offense that we're seeing from the forward group here. You mentioned Skinner. I would mention Eichel again. I've been fairly critical of him, and I'm not one of those trade Eichel people, but I am someone who's going to point out when he's not playing up to his potential. And I think Taylor Hall, I think he looked a little better tonight than he had earlier in the week, but still, not getting on. Not getting the chances that I think a player like him he should be getting. Walter, I'm interested to hear if you have like a sort of a more nuanced look of what's happening with the forward group here, if you have to add tonight's game especially.
Well, I mean, like Jack Eichel last season, just as an example, was probably his best shooting season of his career. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers on me, but I remember Stephen Valiquette, who does hockey analytics research, used to play in the NHL. He had some statistic where Jack Eichel on just like clean shots on the goalie with like no defenseman, just one-on-one him and the goalie, was actually the best shooter in the NHL in that category last season. I mean, he was better than Malkin and Matthews in that category, who are both incredible shooters. And Eichel just hasn't been getting like those shots to go in this year. I mean, he's had a couple that have been close. I mean, really, he just hasn't been getting off. Like, he just doesn't look as electric as he did in previous seasons. I'm not sure if that's a little bit of rust, or maybe it's because Taylor Hall was a new addition to his line, and he's also a player that really likes to have the puck on his stick when entering the zone. So that took away some puck touches from Eichel. I mean, maybe it's just like, it's just kind of a weird season with the COVID protocols and all the players catching COVID cases. Maybe that's playing a factor, but the offense, the main difference with like Eichel in the top line this year is last year, they were really outperforming their expected numbers, had a really high shooting percentage. And this year they're severely underperforming their expected numbers, which was pretty unexpected on a line with some pretty good shooting talent. So, I mean, things should regress to the mean in terms of their shooting talent, but it's just once things do regress to the mean, I mean, how good of a team are they? Are they middle of the pack? Are they a top team? I mean, at this point, with the way they're playing, they're looking like a middle of the pack team at best.
Totally agree with that. Jordan, anything to add? Especially observations from tonight's game?
But you know what's bad when you're giving up a 2-0 on your own power play, and obviously Tom Wilson scores a shorthanded goal there.
Yeah.
And the power play was actually quite a strength for the Sabres this season up until the COVID break. So something just isn't going right there.
It is funny because they have an incredible power play. They have a top 5 power play in the league, but their 5-on-5 is atrocious. So something's got to work out here. I know Kruger tried messing around with the lines there in the third period, and we got another like Hall, Stahl, and Reinhardt, but obviously not getting it done. So, do you guys think there's anything that Kruger could do with the lines here? He's tried some stuff in the top 6, but nothing's really going here. What do you guys think on this? Is there any moves they can make that could start this offense?
I mean, I think he definitely has to break up that Eakin line with Reeder and Okposo. I mean, that line actually wasn't too bad tonight, but I mean, just the whole season, they've kind of been getting killed. And I mean, the line looked okay before Okposo was on the line when they had Asplund and Cousins in that spot. But I mean, now that Okposo's there, I mean, that line they're just getting absolutely destroyed in their own end, and they're really not producing much on offense because of that. I think that line you could definitely, I don't know, maybe drop down a player from the top 6 to try to help out that line a bit, or toss Cousins back on there and he comes back. I mean, that line definitely needs some help. And even in the top 6, I mean, you're kind of running out of ideas at this point. I mean, Skinner, both his appearances in the top 6 this season, he just looked awful. He's kind of actually looked better on that line with Cheyenne and Lazar. So it's like, I don't really know what Kruger can do at this point going forward. I think maybe he has to look at more like systemic changes, like kind of looking to produce more offense on 5-on-5 by changing up their playing style rather than just lines, because really no lines they have worked that well this season other than that Eichel Hall line to start off the season. But I mean, yeah, it's just kind of been a disaster in player personnel choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really interesting. I wrote a piece on this today. The fact that Eichel and Hall have a combined 3 goals this season, and 2 of them are on the power play, of 1 even strength goal. Hall's only goal came in his first game as a Sabre. This is not good. This is not what the Sabres wanted. So something's got to give here. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know, or this is just a cursed team, but it is really weird to witness. It's not like they're not getting opportunities. They're getting plenty of opportunities. Like the fact that Hall and Eichel have shooting percentages under 5%, do you think that's going to last? Or do you think they're going to end up going back to their normal ways? And as the games tick by, it really makes you wonder how this is all going to play out in the end, because it's not looking good. And fans are fed up. So
I could see I mean, you look at the Twitter mentions just after the game score is posted, and yeah, people are not happy. I mean, the way I see it, as far as the forward lines, you have 3 wingers who need to play with Eichel or they're not going to be good. Taylor Hall, Victor Olofsson, and Jeff Skinner, and they can't all play with him. 2 of them can, but after that, and they're not even playing that well, like not even producing as much as they should when they are together, except on the power play. Olofsson is lethal there, and that's kind of the only upside that I'm seeing so far out of this week. So he looks good, but other than that, it's a mystery to me. I don't know what combinations are going to work, but yeah.
Maybe Kruger will figure it out.
We'll see.
I don't think what is your take on this? I know some people are on Twitter are saying to fire Kruger and this is all his fault. In my opinion, I put this on the players. Kruger's tried a bunch of things. These guys have had plenty of opportunities and they're not getting it done. So what is your guys' take on the coaching situation?
I think in terms of Kruger, I think his system, I just think he's trying to put a system in place and trying to fit players that were already here before he got on the team into that system. And I think that system's not working. The only issue I see with firing Kruger, though, especially at this point in the season, is he seems to build a really strong relationship with a lot of the players on the team, especially like even guys like Eichel talk about his relationship with Kruger that he's developed so far. I mean, Jack Eichel at this point, he's probably the last guy you want to piss off on the Sabres, just because he's your franchise. So the Sabres are in a really tough situation, because like if these results continue, I mean, Phil Housley was fired for a lot less. So do you keep Kruger around just to keep the players happy? I mean, I don't really know. Like Kevin Adams is going to have a really like tough choice ahead of him if the Sabres continue this standard of play, because I think at some point you do have to look at firing Kruger. But I mean, the Sabres have really never had a coach before that has been this liked by his players, like Ralph Kruger. I mean, probably not since Lindy Ruff, honestly. So it's going to be interesting how things play out.
For sure. Yeah. Kruger, rumors coming out about his status with the team aren't going to be the only thing affecting the Sabres moving forward. For better or for worse, we've actually heard a couple of things in the news and rumors column here. Pierre LeBrun said on TSN, he said, as of now, the Sabres have no plans to trade Taylor Hall, and that there's actually mutual interest in a contract extension between the 2 parties, which is kind of baffling for me if I'm Taylor Hall. But you know what? And he came here, so there's obviously something there in the Kruger connection as well. I want to start off with Walter here, and then we can move around the table here. If you were in Kevin Adams' shoes as a general manager here, what is the term and cap you're willing to give to a player like Taylor Hall? And if you're Taylor Hall, what do you see in Buffalo? Why do you want to stay here for longer?
Well, I mean, I think the really hard thing with Taylor Hall going forward is that the Sabres already have a left winger in Jeff Skinner. I mean, he's obviously been underperforming, but they have $9 million per year committed to him for a pretty long term. So I think if you try to get Taylor Hall to stay here, I would maybe go up to his current cap at now 8 million, but try to keep the term down, which I don't know if they will be able to do unless Taylor Hall like really wants to be here. And I mean, that's kind of the thing that's confusing me at this point is like why Taylor Hall actually wants to be on this team, especially after this start, because there's rumors of him wanting that extension. And it's like he could go to a team like Boston or just hop on that team right now, maybe take a bit of a pay cut. I mean, that was something that he was rumored to possibly doing this past offseason just to win a Stanley Cup. I mean, maybe he really likes the area. Maybe he likes being close to Toronto. I mean, I don't really know like what the attraction is to Buffalo because he definitely hasn't had the best start here. But I mean, I'd be interested in keeping him for like maybe 3 or 4 years. I mean, if you have to give him like 7 years, that's when I start to question things because that's going really deep into his 30s. And I mean, we've seen how most of those contracts have worked out in the NHL. I mean, just look at guys like James Neal, like Okposo, Andrew Ladd. I mean, obviously, probably not on the same level as Taylor Hall, but I mean, some guys' games fall off really fast in their 30s. And I mean, you don't want to be caught with not just one, but two bad contracts with guys in their 30s with Skinner and Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jordan, you got anything? Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to Taylor Hall, he's clearly lived off of that Hart Trophy season back a few years ago with the New Jersey Devils, which, by the way, like Nico Hischier was quite a big part in that. And we can clearly see that now because Hall has yet to be able to really replicate that, even with a guy like Jack Eichel, even though still small sample size. But if I'm Kevin Adams, man, like I said, I'm giving him a short-term deal at around roughly the same cap hit, probably a 3 to 4 year contract. And obviously it's going to be interesting in a pandemic like setting, what he's actually going to be able to earn. If maybe he'll say it doesn't work out with the Sabres. I could even see a fit there with Colorado playing next to Nazem Kadri for maybe a year or two before they have to give contracts to Makar and Byram. So there's interesting options here for Taylor Hall and what he wants to do. And I would be very surprised if he really does actually want to be in Buffalo, because that's pretty crazy. You want to be in Buffalo?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, especially we're saying 8 million, but if this performance stays the way, I feel like it could digress a bit. I mean, he's not playing the game that he was signed here to play, which I think is going to play a big factor. But the fact that I don't even know why this is coming up now that he's looking at extending his contract in Buffalo. I don't know why this is in the news right now. It seems a bit weird, but if they could keep him around at a reasonable price and he can start producing, then why not? There is a potential if Buffalo ever, dare I say, make the playoffs or becomes a success story, it would be an awesome thing for him to be a part of. I know he a lot of the reason he signed here was Kruger. If Kruger's staying around, and also the fact he has family close by in Toronto, I think plays a big role. And obviously the Leafs don't have any room for someone like Hall. So it's close to home. If he can kind of set up a success story here, then maybe he'll stick around. We'll have to see what happens. But I think it's really early to be for him to be kind of out here talking to the Sabres and trying to figure this out now. I know they can't really start negotiating until March 12th, so I don't even know how this is, how Friedman's getting this stuff, but there we go.
Yeah, speaking about Elliot Friedman, he went on the local radio station today, WGR 550, and talked about the possibility of the Sabres trading Jack Eichel. He said yes, and this is exactly what he said. Well, here's the thing. Obviously, the Sabres came back out of the break with 2 really tough losses, and that has started to talk about what could happen. He cited the New York Rangers and the Los Angeles Kings as potential trade suitors. And Bob McKenzie had previously reported about the New York Rangers acquiring him last season, off-season, sorry. Do we think there's a fit there? Now, this is what I got to ask you, Walter. If you had to trade Jack Eichel. He's forcing your hand here between the Rangers and the Kings. Who are you picking and who are you targeting?
I think between the two teams, I think I would definitely lean towards the Kings if a trade had to happen, just because I think the Kings could provide that one centerpiece player, which would be Quinton Byfield. Like, I'm not really sure if the Rangers have that type of player. I mean, maybe you could say like Capo Caco, but I mean, he had a questionable rookie year. I mean, he's been really good this year, but I mean, for a trade for Eichel, you probably want a bit more solid of a centerpiece coming back. And Byfield, his position as a center definitely provides that, because Sabres don't really have too many players in the pipeline down the middle outside of maybe Dylan Cousins. So, I mean, I think if you had to trade him, I would definitely look to LA, probably Quinton Byfield as a centerpiece. I mean, maybe they just have a really good group of prospects in their system. So maybe you could get a guy like Jordan Spence if you're looking at defense, or like Samuel Fagemo on offense, or maybe Arthur Kaliev, have that player be another toss in. And then, I mean, you could look at a first round draft pick too. I mean, probably wouldn't want a first round draft pick in this upcoming draft. I mean, obviously this class is a bit weaker, and there's definitely the challenges with not really being able to fully scout this draft year. So if they could manage to sneak out a 2022 first round pick out of LA, I mean, LA's, imagine if they're like still not able to bounce back and you get a decent shot at a guy like Shane Wright or Brad Lambert or Matthew Savoy. I mean, just a bunch of great players in that draft class. So I think if the doomsday did come and Jack Eichel demanded a trade, I mean, I'd definitely look at LA.
How about you, Tom?
Yeah, I'd go the same thing. I mean, you could always talk about Lafreniere. I know they were potentially looking before the draft at swapping out their first overall pick for Jack Eichel, including that in the deal. But Lafreniere really hasn't done much yet. I mean, it's obviously way too early to tell. This is too small of a sample size. But to commit to giving up Jack Eichel, which I honestly don't think that's happening. To commit to that with what Lafreniere has shown, I think that's a bit of a risk. So yeah, I would probably end up going with the Kings, but I don't see this happening.
Any last thoughts, Brandon?
Yeah, obviously I wouldn't condone the trading of Eichel, but if you're forcing my hand, I'm going to say it's a no-brainer to send him to LA. You do not want him in the same conference. You don't want him anywhere near the Buffalo Sabres if you're getting rid of him, So yeah, LA Kings, put him out there. And if you can get a guy like Byfield back, it's obviously too early to project, but I don't think Byfield played as good as he could have in the World Juniors. I don't know if he's going to be a player like Eichel. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm not sure the return. I feel like if you're trading a player like Eichel, you're going to lose. It doesn't matter, what you try to pull off. Just make sure it's not an O'Reilly type deal, getting that kind of return, and then you'll be better off.
But remember, Brandon, you can't judge a player off their World Junior
Oh,
performance.
I know. Yeah, or else we'd all be drafting, I don't know, Jordan Eberle or other people like that. So
or Curtis Lazar would be first overall.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. Being too hasty here. Anyway, yeah. Let's restart the show here. You're watching Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube. Follow and share on Facebook, and catch all the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed. Do check out that article Tom put out about the lack of production from Hall and Eichel. You're going to like that one. Let's shift to some prospect talk. Tom, why don't you kick it off here for the Sabres? We're talking about Sabres prospects here.
Yeah, so we can start off with Arttu Ruotsalainen, who's been, a lot of people, including me, thought he would potentially compete for a spot on the Sabres to start the NHL season this year. Didn't end up happening. They sent him down to Rochester. He's playing on the first line center there. And when the COVID thing went down, they had the Islanders games. They had some opportunities to call some of these AHLers up, and his name was not on the list, which I found interesting. I was like, why not just give him a look? He's been producing well down there. He has 4 points in 4 games. What are your guys' take on? I'll start with Walter. What's your take on this prospect, and does he deserve a shot with the Sabres this season?
Ruotsalainen, Tage Thompson looked really good in training camp too, but I thought Ruotsalainen looked really good right along Tage Thompson on that line. He's just I think he's a much smarter player than a guy like Tage Thompson. I know Tage Thompson couldn't really go on waivers. Like Ruotsalainen, he lacks all like the physical traits that Tage Thompson has. He doesn't have the size, but I think he really has that hockey IQ, and he's just a really well-rounded player. I mean, he's even got a nice shot too. I mean, we've seen it on the power play out in Finland. I mean, I believe he scored a goal in a similar spot in Rochester this season too. I mean, I'm just really shocked that he somehow managed to not make the Sabres roster. I mean, it almost seemed like it was kind of like predestined that he would come over here and they would send him down, like no matter what he did in training camp. Which I mean, I don't really understand. I mean, the Sabres don't really have a great track record with European free agents and not really giving them a shot. I mean, we see what happened with Pilot. I mean, it's just kind of just give these guys a shot. I mean, Ruotsalainen, he could definitely provide some punch to that power play too. I mean, at this point, it's just hard to understand like what the Sabres' goal is with him because he's not even that young either. I mean, he's had 250 pro games under his belt. I mean, I think he's more than ready to be in the Sabres lineup.
Yeah, and I thought that was the perfect opportunity against the Islanders. If you're missing a bunch of players you're expected to lose anyways, why not give him a shot? He can play center or wing. So I didn't get that. What's your take on it, Brandon?
Yeah, and I mean, if Kevin Adams thought there was a lack of organizational pieces that you could put into the lineup, over guys like Riley Shahan and Cody Eakin, then I think he was wrong about that. I think organizational players, especially from the Amherst, because the Amherst have been good for years, and they have some players who've been pretty much festering down there, just waiting to get in the Sabres lineup. And I think, like you said, it was a good opportunity, and I'm sad it hasn't happened yet, but I hope he does get a look this year.
Yeah, I mean, looking at him, he obviously showcased that wicked one-time release on his first goal in that game as well. He went 7-0 at 5v5 in high danger chances. That was tracked by Chad Didominicus in that game. This is a legit prospect. This is a guy that should be playing over a player like Cody Eakin. We always say this: Cody Eakin wins faceoffs. What else does he do? Yeah. I think he needs to be on this team.
Yeah, for sure. And while we're still talking Americans, we can kind of transition here. Jack Quinn made his professional hockey debut tonight, and he recorded an assist. So I wasn't watching the game. I was watching the Sabres, but it sounds like it went well for him. And this was kind of a concern about he was supposed to be playing in the OHL. The OHL still hasn't started. They said they're still hoping to start a season, might be non-contact, which obviously that's not going to work out for your prospects. You're not going to send your prospects to a non-contact league. But the concern was rushing someone into professional hockey, because we've seen this happen before. We saw it with Casey Middlestat, just rushing them too quickly into playing with full-grown adults, full contact with people a lot older than you. What are your guys' perspective on? Do you think this is good that Quinn's with the Americans? Do you think he should have been loaned to Europe? Do you think if the OHL comes back and let's say they do give hitting, do they send him over there? What are they going to do with him? Jordan, you can start.
Yeah, well, I actually wrote an article about this a month ago talking about this exact type of scenario. And honestly, I do appreciate that he is playing in the AHL, because it looks like it's going to be a 24-game regular season in the Ontario Hockey League. And obviously, it looks like it's going to be non-contact, as been speculated. And that's just not good for a guy like Jack Quinn. He needs to be learning the professional game. This is a guy that really had a poor World Juniors. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is because, it was kind of a questionable pick at 8th overall in general, especially with a player like Marco Rossi and Cole Perfetti still on the draft board. But, to come into Rochester, working with their staff, I think it makes sense for him to be in the AHL this season.
Yeah, well, I mean, a wise man once told me you can't judge someone's pro performance off of their World Juniors performance. So harken back to that. No, I'm kidding. But I also think it's good that he's in the AHL. Get him used to that professional style. And there's a lot of good players in the AHL, a lot of big, strong, players who, play the game very well. And to get him that experience as just, a brand new draft pick, I think that's priceless. That's very good for him. And look at Jack Quinn. I mean, the goal scorer tallying an assist in his first game. So, that's cool. A lot of people called him the best goal scorer in the draft. And yeah, while guys like Rossi and Perfetti were still available, you gotta trust Kevin Adams in his first draft here and just hope that things turn out well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the really important thing with Jack Quinn is just considering like how old he was in his draft year. I mean, he was just a few weeks away from being eligible in the prior draft. I mean, he's 11 months older than a guy like Quinton Byfield, so he's like pretty mature relative to like most of his draft class peers. So I think the AHL is like the perfect spot for him at this point. I mean, especially since he scored 50 goals in the OHL last season, he really doesn't have much more to prove there. I mean, you could tell the game almost looked too easy for him last season, the OHL. I mean, the Ottawa 67s were just destroying teams on offense. So I think he'll get a good shot in Rochester. I mean, it's also great to have the Sabres coaching staff be able to get their hands on him right now. I mean, I know they're doing work with him at Harbor Center. So, I mean, that's always a huge benefit to keeping him here in Rochester and Buffalo rather than loaning him out to Europe. I mean, I think eventually, once the OHL does return, I would imagine they would make him return back to the OHL. The same with like all the OHL players in the AHL right now, which I mean, I guess wouldn't be a bad thing because this is short an OHL season. He's still got a good amount of pro experience. So I don't think this season will mess up his development too much. I mean, it may actually benefit his development being able to work with the Sabres coaching staff this early on.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I love about Jack Quinn is he's always been the type of person to prove people wrong. He was a late bloomer in the sport. He was cut from multiple AAA teams growing up. He was late into the OHL. And now he's gone into his first professional hockey game and recorded an assist. I like this guy. I think he's got a bright future if he can keep doing what he's doing and keep proving people wrong and just take his own journey.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome story in the making. Looking ahead here, rest of the week for the Buffalo Sabres here, another story in the making, probably not so enjoyable. They're playing the New Jersey Devils again. And I don't say it's not going to be enjoyable because I think they're going to lose. I think they actually have a good shot at winning. I just say because of the last time that they met, I'm wondering if there's any bad blood. Obviously some things are uncontrollable, but the Sabres organization seemed pretty upset when the COVID breakout happened last time, and there was some, words said about, the New Jersey Devils in the league. What do we think from a game standpoint, and what do we think from just a, sort of revenge match standpoint against the Devils here? Let's start with Jordan.
It's surely going to be interesting. I'm curious
Yeah.
to see how the Sabres respond. You have to imagine they got to get, I think they need to get at least 3 out of 4 points in this next matchup here against the New Jersey Devils. You're facing Jack Hughes, who has been pretty great to start the season, like Capo Caco has too. But you need guys like Jack Eichel. These are the games where Jack Eichel, Taylor Hall, and Jeff Skinner need to get going, in my opinion. If you can't do it now, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I think the Sabres really need to take advantage of these games when they're playing weaker teams. We've seen a lot of the Capitals, for example, this season, and the Flyers. These are top teams in the East Division. You got to start taking advantage when you're getting these games against the lower teams. You have to be getting points here. And so 3 of the next 4 games for the Sabres are against the Devils, and you're gonna have to come out of that with points. So this season's just like I was saying in my piece today, this season's got to turn around fast. Like I wouldn't say it's panic time yet. There's still a lot of time. You got more than 40 games left, but you're cutting it really close. If you're going to start turning it on, you got to do it now. And this is a perfect opportunity. 3 out of 4 games against the New Jersey Devils. They got to do it now. If it's revenge that's going to fire them up, that's even the I don't know whose fault it was again with that COVID situation. That was a whole mess. But if that's what's going to get them going, that's what they got to do. But they need to get points now.
Yeah, I mean, like Tom said, I mean, you really have to pick up really just the easy points while you can. And the Devils, who have been playing pretty well this year, I mean, they really outplayed the Sabres the last time they played them. But I mean, they're really the one team the Sabres kind of have to try to pick up points on. I mean, because you still have all the games with Boston left. I mean, Boston's looking like an elite team as they've always been. I mean, you're probably not expecting many points in those games. So, I mean, you really have to pick up points on teams like the Devils, teams like the Rangers. I mean, the more points you drop to those teams, I mean, the more points you're going to have to earn against some of the better teams in this division. So it's going to be really important to bounce back against the Devils. I mean, even after the past couple games we've seen after they came back from COVID, it's just kind of the Sabres just need something. I mean, maybe if they could get like a 5-goal game like they had against the Flyers just to jumpstart the offense a bit. I mean, at some point, I think just lack of scoring, it's just going to start becoming mental. I mean, especially with guys like Skinner, Eichel, they're like extremely low shooting percentages. I mean, at some point, these guys might just give up. I mean, so you really need to bounce back against a team like the Devils.
Yep, 100% agreed. I think they need to get back in the win column here, start racking up some points because they are not in a good place in the division right now. Anything else from anybody?
I think we've covered everything. It's just this total sense of urgency right now. They got to get it done. You saw after the game finished tonight, I was watching on MSG and they just showed the camera like it was Dahlin and I don't know who else it was. They were just behind the net, just stick on their knees, just looking at the ground. Like these guys feel defeated right now. They have to wake up, start putting the puck in the net, stop missing the net, hitting the post every single time. Like it has to go in. And they're running out of excuses. We've said bad puck luck so long now. Once you get to we're approaching the 15 game mark, we can't use this excuse much longer. At some point, this is really just on the players. So we'll see what they can do. They have a great opportunity here with their upcoming schedule to take these points. And if they can't get these points against the Devils, the other teams that they're going to be playing in this division, I'm sorry, but this might be a lost cause. But I'm still optimistic. I'm not cutting them out yet. I think if they turn it around now, there's still a shot.
I think the Sabres just need to learn how to have fun again, man. Maybe they should bring someone on like Digit Murphy, the head coach of the Toronto Six, because she really promotes having fun. We saw that in the NWHL playoffs there. The Sabres just need to learn how to have fun again and enjoy playing hockey. You don't want guys like Ryan O'Reilly coming out of the organization saying they lost their passion and love for the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen it multiple times. Another thing, I totally forgot to mention. I was going to mention it on the Hockey Writers Live last night, and then tonight, I've tweeted about it a bit. This team needs more grit, in my opinion. I saw it tonight. There was one I saw it. I tweeted it out tonight, and I was like, that is a perfect example. There was an instance, Ullmark after the whistle, Ovechkin went literally 2 or 3 seconds after the whistle had already gone, and jabbed Ullmark, totally unnecessary. All he got was a little shove from Curtis Lazar. This team, you never see these guys getting into scrums after the whistle or roughing it, or those exciting games you're watching where the teams are back and forth drilling each other against the board. They don't have that, and I feel like that's something that if you add that to their game, it could really hype them up. If these guys are getting fired up and they actually hate the team they're playing against. So that's an interesting thing I've noticed. They don't stand up for the goalie. They don't stand up for their teammates. Yeah, just not a very passionate game all around. Uninspiring.
Yes, so it looks like we're just about to end here, guys. So we thank you for joining us. This has been the Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube, follow and share the show on Facebook, and follow the show on Twitter at Sabres Scoop THW. We'd also like to thank Sabermetrics for joining us the time around. Make sure to go follow him at Sabermetrics on Twitter. And don't miss out on all the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com. From Brandon and Tom, this is Jordan, and this has been the Sabres Scoop. Until next time.